Welcome to our channel, a place where we take you on a journey through time, where stories flow in a calm and soothing voice, inviting you to relax and drift into sleep as you lose yourself in the details of the past. Put on your headphones, close your eyes, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The journey is about to begin. Now, imagine for a moment that you suddenly wake up in a small rural village somewhere in Europe in the year 1348, right in the heart of the Middle Ages. A world without smartphones, without electricity, without running water, and not even toilet paper. The air around you is thick with a mix of smells: damp earth, sweat, and the stench of waste piling up in the narrow, winding streets. Every corner here tells a story, and every sound whispers secrets from a forgotten age. People move slowly. Life is simple yet harsh. Each day is a new struggle for survival in a world untouched by modern civilization. The only sounds that fill the air are the creaking of wooden carts over dirt roads, the shouts of weary farmers toiling through their endless day, and the distant tolling of church bells echoing across the village. This is not a romantic adventure like the ones you see in movies. It's a harsh reality that most people today wouldn't endure for even a single day. Let me take you on a journey through time to tell you the story of one ordinary day in the life of someone just like you. Someone from our modern world transported into that distant era, so we can discover together why this day might be the hardest you would ever live. The story begins with you, an ordinary person living in the 11th century, a time when life is simple, yet filled with endless challenges. Every step you take, every breath you draw, hides a new hardship. Muddy streets that swallow your boots, exhausting labor that never seems to end, and daily battles against hunger, cold, and disease. This world knows no comfort, no luxury, and no mercy, at least not in the way we understand them today. Your name is Sammy. You wake up on a bed made of coarse straw inside a small mud hut, its damp walls seeming as though they might collapse on you under the weight of the cold air. A faint light seeps through a tiny window covered with a tattered piece of cloth, barely blocking the few scattered rays of sunlight. The chill seeps deep into your bones. The hut offers little protection against the biting autumn wind that blows mercilessly outside. You look around and find no sign of central heating, only a small fireplace in the corner, its ashes still cold from the night before. You long for a warmth that never truly existed here. The modern clothes you once knew are gone, replaced by a coarse linen shirt and a pair of worn leather shoes that make every step ache. You feel the pangs of hunger, but there is no modern kitchen, no refrigerator, no stocked pantry. Only an iron pot hanging above the fireplace and a few pieces of hardened bread resting on a worn wooden table. The smell of stale bread and cold iron fills the air, a stark reminder of how harsh daily life is here, where simplicity is not a choice or a virtue, but a constant struggle for survival. Everything around you screams of a harsh reality. The sounds, the smells, the cold, the hunger, all merging together to turn a single day into an unforgettable ordeal. It feels as if you've been ripped straight out of the modern world and thrown into the very heart of the Middle Ages, where every moment echoes like a cry from time itself. You step out of the hut and find yourself in a small village, where the houses are built from mud and wood, blending seamlessly into the earth as if they were born from it. The roads are muddy from the last rainfall, and with every step, your feet sink slightly into the wet ground, as though the earth itself is reminding you just how unforgiving life here can be. The people around you move quickly, their faces worn and tired from relentless labor, their clothes stained and marked by long, grueling days. They glance at you with curiosity, but no one stops to speak. You are a stranger here, and in the Middle Ages, strangers were not always welcomed. Your stomach twists with hunger, prompting you to approach an old woman walking nearby and ask her where you might find something to eat. She looks at you with surprise, then raises her hand, pointing to the hardened bread she carries. With a simple yet sorrowful smile, she tells you, "This is what we eat. If you are lucky, you might find some soup in the evening." You take a deep breath, feeling that everything around you tells the story of a hard life, full of trials and labor, where simplicity is not a luxury, but a daily struggle for survival. The small village, the weary people. Everything here reminds you that the time you've stepped into is not just history, but a living experience. Harsh, unforgiving, yet real in every detail. You quickly learn that food is scarce, especially for the peasants. The nobility lead an entirely different life, enjoying fresh meats, carefully chosen vegetables, and fine wines. The peasants, who make up the vast majority of the population, rely on black bread made from barley or rye, and simple vegetables like onions and cabbage. Occasionally, if luck is on their side, they might have a thin soup made from leftover grains, barely enough to satisfy hunger. Meat is extremely rare here, appearing perhaps only on holidays or during special occasions. You try to chew a piece of bread given to you by the old woman, but it is as hard as stone, with an earthy taste, as if the soil itself has been kneaded into it. You quickly discover that this bread often contains tiny stones or dust from the millstones, enough to break your teeth if you're not careful. Water presents another challenge for survival. Clean water is not easily available. People drink from wells or rivers, which are often contaminated and carry the risk of disease. Every sip you take becomes a small gamble with your body, a test of endurance in a harsh environment that shows no mercy. With every bite and every sip, you feel the harshness of the time you've stepped into, where everything that is normal for them becomes a test of patience, strength, and endurance for you. The most common drink here is light beer, considered safer than the contaminated water, but its taste is bitter and strange on your tongue, something you've never gotten used to. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, and you recall the breakfasts you're used to in your own world. A hot cup of coffee, toasted bread, perhaps an egg. Here, there is no refrigerator, no nearby cafe, no trace of the comforts that remind you of the warm home you left behind. You step out of the hut in search of food and find yourself in the village square, where the harshness of life is visible to anyone who passes through. People move slowly, their faces etched with fatigue, their clothes dirty and torn from long days of labor and the biting cold. You see an old woman carrying a wooden bucket filled with brown water, clearly having spent hours fetching it from the well, while a small child runs barefoot, his face streaked with dirt, playing as if unaware of hunger or fatigue. Everything you see here tells the story of a life full of hardship, where simplicity is not a luxury but a daily struggle to survive. You approach a man who appears to be a peasant and ask him where you might find food. He looks at you cautiously with suspicion, then points to a small hut tucked in the corner of the square. You enter the hut to find a large pot boiling over an open fire, the smoke filling the space with a faint aroma of cooked grains. The soup before you is nothing more than a mixture of coarse grains and a few withered vegetables, perhaps with a small piece of salted meat that is difficult to chew. You eat cautiously, but the taste is strange, and the texture feels as if you are chewing dirt. No salt, no spices, just bland food that barely seems enough to satisfy your hunger. History tells us that food in the Middle Ages was extremely limited for peasants. Their basic diet relied on grains such as barley and wheat, simple vegetables like cauliflower and onions, and occasionally tiny pieces of salted or dried meat. But such treats were rare exceptions rather than the norm. Every spoonful of this soup carries a silent lesson about the harshness of life, about the poverty that surrounds the peasants, and about the daily struggle of humans to survive in a world that knows neither luxury nor the mercy we take for granted today. Hunger was widespread, especially in late winter, when food stores ran low and obtaining a meal became extremely difficult. Historical accounts, such as those documented by medieval chroniclers like Biannuti, describe life during the Middle Ages and emphasize that clean water was rare, often contaminated, leading to numerous intestinal diseases. After breakfast, you feel a slight pain in your stomach. Perhaps the soup you ate wasn't entirely clean. You try to ignore it and step outside to explore the village, but what you see fills you with deep concern. The people around you cough violently, and some appear unnaturally pale. Your eyes fall on a little girl passing by, her face covered in red blotches, her eyes bloodshot, speaking more through silence than words. You hear whispers in the corners about the plague, and your heart begins to race. True fear grips you, as if you have suddenly been thrust into the heart of one of the deadliest epidemics in history. The village that at first seemed merely a miserable and hard place to live now unfolds before your eyes as a terrifying scene, filled with hidden dangers. Every person could be a potential victim, and every path might silently carry death. The Black Plague, which wiped out between 30% and 50% of Europe's population in the mid-14th century, seems to lurk in every corner of the village. The air around you is charged with unseen danger, and every breath you take carries the possibility of a silent death. You head to the village well to drink some water, but what you see fills you with dread. The water appears murky and unclean, and there is no way to be certain it is free from disease. You remember that water in the Middle Ages was a primary source of illnesses such as dysentery and typhoid, and every sip was a gamble with your very life. There are no modern medicines here, no hospitals, and if you fall ill, your only hope lies with a local healer who uses herbal remedies or relies on old traditions and personal experience. Methods that could easily worsen your condition instead of curing it. History shows us that diseases spread rapidly due to poor hygiene and lack of medical knowledge. And the Black Plague between 1340 and 1351 was an unprecedentedly devastating catastrophe. It wasn't just the plague that threatened the villagers. Other diseases such as smallpox and tuberculosis were common as well. Every day here was a test of survival, and everyone lived under the shadow of an invisible danger. One that could not be seen with the naked eye, yet was present in every breath, every encounter, and every passing moment. Medical treatments were primitive and often ineffective, as historical sources on the Black Plague confirm. Hope for recovery was extremely limited. Before you can even consider your next move, a man wearing light armor approaches you and orders you to head to the fields. You are now part of the feudal system, where peasants work relentlessly to sustain the nobility. He hands you a rusty sickle and orders you to harvest the wheat under the scorching sun. Each hour feels like an entire day. Your back aches. Your hands are covered in wounds from the worn-out tool that barely does its job, and sweat streams down your face with no respite. There is no clean water to quench your thirst, and no hope of reward for this grueling labor. As you look around the village, you witness social injustice with your own eyes. The nobility live in distant, lavish estates filled with comfort and luxury, while the peasants toil endlessly for meager wages. Every movement, every drop of sweat, every cut on your hands tells the story of inequality and cruelty in this life, where each day is a struggle to survive, and every moment of exhaustion carries a silent lesson about the harshness of the Middle Ages. You hear a story about a gypsy girl who tried to steal a loaf of bread to feed her younger brother, only to be publicly flogged in front of the entire village. Justice here is severe, and punishments range from whipping to execution for the simplest of crimes. Mercy is rarely shown to anyone daring to break the laws. History shows that the feudal system dominated Europe during the Middle Ages, with peasants working long hours in exchange for minimal protection and a tiny plot of land. Taxes were heavy, legal punishments harsh and often unjust, making daily life filled with fear and uncertainty. As the sun sets, you return to the hut, exhausted and hungry. The fire in the hearth is your only source of light, but the smoke fills the room, making you cough. No electricity, no internet, no smartphone. Boredom creeps in, yet sleep offers no safe refuge. You listen carefully and hear strange sounds outside the hut, the howling of wolves, or perhaps the footsteps of thieves roaming in the darkness. Security is non-existent, and danger lurks around every corner. A single step outside the hut's walls could be fraught with death or theft. Everything around you reminds you of the harshness of the Middle Ages, where survival was a daily battle, and peace of mind was nothing more than an unattainable illusion. Before you close your eyes, you hear distant screams echoing through the village. Is it another sick villager groaning under the weight of the plague? Or an attack by thieves? Or is the village facing some unexpected new threat? Your heart races, and a shiver of fear seeps deep into your bones. You decide to hide beneath the straw in your worn-out bed, trying to make yourself small and invisible, yet your heart races uncontrollably. Will you survive until morning? Can you endure another day in this brutal world, where hunger, disease, and danger never give you a moment's peace? The ending is left open. As you lie in the darkness, you ask yourself, will I find a way to survive here, or will I succumb to hunger, illness, or fear? The choice is yours, but the harsh truth is undeniable. The Middle Ages do not pass easily, and no one escapes their cruelty without struggle. With the first light of dawn, you awaken once more to the tolling of the church bell. The screams you heard the previous night have subsided, but fear still grips your heart. You cautiously slip out of the hut to find the village in a state of quiet chaos. The sounds are subdued yet tense, and the pale faces around you tell the story of a long, difficult night. People are gathering around a wooden cart carrying a body wrapped in tattered cloth. Whispers circulate about the plague, and everyone there seems to understand that death is closer than you had imagined. No one knows how the disease spreads. Some blame the foul air, while others believe it to be a divine curse. You realize there is no escaping the reality before you and decide that you must find a way to survive. You recall your modern skills, your knowledge of hygiene, basic science, and perhaps a few small technological tricks you learned in your contemporary world. But how can any of this be applied in a society that does not even know the concept of bacteria? You approach an old woman, who seems less hostile than the others, and ask her how you might earn food or protection. She looks at you with weary eyes, burdened by years of struggle and suffering, and responds in a calm but firm voice. If you want to survive here, you must help in the fields or learn a useful skill. But beware, strangers rarely live long in this village. History confirms this feeling. Fear of the plague made villagers wary of strangers, as they sometimes believed that newcomers might bring disease and worsen their suffering. Skilled trades such as blacksmithing or carpentry were highly valued, but learning them required many years, and opportunities were limited. Peasants were often trapped in their roles by the feudal system, which imposed strict restrictions on social mobility and labor, making their lives an endless cycle of hard work and subservience, with little hope of improving their circumstances. You try your luck in the fields once more, but this time you attempt to speak with the other peasants, hoping to make friends or learn something new about their harsh lives. You meet a boy named Edward, no older than 15, yet he looks far older due to constant fatigue and exhaustion. He tells you that his family perished in a previous wave of the plague, and now he works for the Lord of the land just to secure his daily food. You try to convince him that boiling water could reduce disease, but he laughs and says, "Clean water is for the nobles. We drink whatever we find." Shocked by the harsh reality, you refuse to give up. In an attempt to prove your worth and be of use, a simple idea comes to mind: improving the harvesting tool by adding a more comfortable handle. You take a piece of wood and attach it to the rusty sickle. The peasants watch you with astonishment, and some begin to mock your efforts. But Edward seems intrigued and starts paying attention to your idea. Before you can demonstrate the usefulness of your modification, the guard appears again, accusing you of tampering with the tools, an act considered sabotage in this rigid and unforgiving world, where innovation or change is forbidden without permission, and every step outside the strict rules could mean immediate punishment. History tells us that innovations were rare among peasants due to the constraints of the feudal system and the constant fear of change, which made any new idea subject to suspicion and strict oversight. Simple technological improvements, like enhancing agricultural tools, began to emerge later in the late Middle Ages, but they often faced rejection or ridicule from traditional society. As the second night approaches, you find yourself facing a difficult choice. The guard approaches and offers you a deal. If you agree to work in the fields for an entire month without complaint, he might allow you to stay in the village as a laborer. Yet, just thinking about the grueling work, meager food, and constant fear of disease makes you question whether you can endure it. On the other hand, you hear of a group of fugitives living in the forest, surviving through hunting and raiding caravans. Their life may offer more freedom, but it is fraught with danger. Potential wolf attacks, constant pursuit by the nobles, and the biting cold that strikes anyone attempting to escape. You stand in the center of the village, the cold wind whipping against your face, while Edward approaches and whispers, "Decide quickly, stranger. The village doesn't favor the hesitant." You glance toward the distant forest, then at the exhausting fields, and finally up at the clouded sky, feeling the weight of the decision pressing heavily on your heart. Taking a deep breath, you make a bold decision. You will not remain in the village to become a slave to the feudal system. You refuse to surrender to its restrictions and cruelty, choosing instead to pursue a life of greater freedom, even if it is fraught with danger. In that moment, you feel as if a new journey has begun. A journey of survival, courage, and free choice in a world that shows no mercy to the weak. The forest, despite its dangers, seems to offer a chance at freedom, or at least an escape from the suffocating cage that is your life in the village. You wait until darkness falls, then cautiously slip out of the village, avoiding the patrolling eyes of the guards. Edward, who seems to trust you just a little, hands you a piece of old bread and a tattered cloth to wrap around your face against the biting cold. He smiles and says, "If you die, don't blame me." But in his eyes lies a real fear that goes far beyond the joke. The forest is dark and dense, and every step you take produces a sound that makes your heart pound even faster. Strange noises surround you. The distant murmur of water, the rustling of leaves, and occasionally a howl that cuts through the silence, sending chills down your spine. Everything here pulses with danger, and every movement demands the utmost vigilance. After hours of wandering, you come across a small fire surrounded by a group of men and women. They are the fugitives, or outlaws as the villagers call them. They eye you warily, rusty swords and daggers in hand, ready for any potential threat. Their leader, a man with a thick beard and prominent scars on his cheek, approaches you, staring with piercing, scrutinizing eyes. He asks sharply, "Why did you leave the village? Are you a spy for the nobles?" Every word and every glance feels heavy on your chest, and you know that a single wrong answer could make you a direct target in this new world, where trust is hard-earned and danger lurks around every corner. You try to explain your story, recounting your life in the modern world, speaking of hygiene, technology, and survival methods you know. But your words sound strange even to your own ears. They laugh, assuming they are facing a madman speaking in a language they cannot comprehend. But the leader, whose name is Thomas, sees something different in your eyes. He studies you intently and says, "If you want to join us, you must prove your worth. Tonight, we will target a caravan passing nearby. If you succeed, we may allow you to stay with us." History shows that outlaws were a common phenomenon in the Middle Ages, especially during times of crisis such as the plague or wars. These groups included runaway peasants, deserter soldiers, and even some exiled nobles. They lived in forests, surviving through hunting and theft, but their lives were fraught with danger, as being caught often meant immediate execution. As midnight approaches, you join Thomas's group in their plan. The caravan they are targeting carries grain and clothing to a nearby castle. The stakes are high. If you fail, you could be killed by the guards or even by the outlaws themselves if they suspect your loyalty. You carry a heavy staff as a weapon, since you still do not know how to wield a sword, and you prepare for every possible outcome. Thomas gives you simple but strict instructions. Stay calm, and do exactly as I say. Every step, every breath, every movement you make now is a test of your courage and intelligence. In a world that shows no mercy to the weak, survival demands leaving fear behind and relying solely on your skills and instincts. As the caravan arrives, chaos erupts immediately. The outlaws strike swiftly, and the screams of horses and the clash of swords fill the air, everything consumed by panic and disorder. You try to hide behind a tree, but one of the guards spots you and raises his sword. In a desperate moment, you grab a small stone and hurl it with all your strength at his head, knocking him unconscious. A brief wave of relief washes over you. You've survived, but adrenaline courses through your veins, your heart pounding from the intensity of danger and the sheer tension of the moment. Thomas watches you and nods slightly in approval, but his voice remains serious. This is only the beginning. Life here is no easier than the village. His words weigh heavily on you, for freedom comes with greater responsibilities and even greater risks. History confirms that caravan attacks were common among outlaws, especially in rural areas where protection was weak. The guards were trained, but outlaws relied on the element of surprise, difficult terrain, and swift movement to their advantage. Life in the forests was indeed harsh. Scarce food, poor shelter, bitter cold, and each day presented a new challenge for survival. The freedom sought by runaway peasants came at a high price, where every decision, every step, and every action could mean the difference between life and death. After the attack, the group returns to their small hideout, a cave hidden behind dense shrubs. The place is dark and slightly damp, but relatively safe from the eyes of guards and villagers. You share a modest meal with them, roasted rabbit and stolen grains, the first time since your arrival that you feel a fleeting moment of hope and brief comfort. Perhaps you can survive here, perhaps you can endure. Yet questions continue to haunt you. How will you avoid the rampant diseases? How will you cope with the coming bitter winter? And what if the nobles catch you one day? Thomas sits beside you and talks about his grand dreams. Building a new life far from the nobles' authority, perhaps in a distant town where trade is said to flourish. You listen cautiously, but your modern knowledge tells you that medieval towns were no less harsh, filled with disease, crime, and overcrowding, and that absolute freedom here may well be an illusion. You try to share with Thomas an idea about improving the shelter using mud and stones, attempting to apply your modern knowledge for everyone's benefit. But he interrupts you firmly, his eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. If you're as clever as you claim, then why are you here with us? The weight of his question presses on you, as if everything now depends on proving your worth, your intelligence, and your courage in this new world, where freedom always comes at a high price. You stare into the flickering fire in the center of the cave, watching the flames cast eerie shadows on the walls, and think of your old world. Clean water, medicine, relative freedom. Can you survive in this harsh world? Can you change your surroundings using your knowledge and instincts? Or are you doomed to fail against the relentless challenges of this life? Thoughts clash in your mind as you hear footsteps approaching the cave. Is it a guard, a wild animal, or merely the wind moving the leaves outside? You grip your staff tightly, tense and ready for any possibility. You wonder, will you be able to face what comes next? Or will the Middle Ages break you before you can find a way out? The footsteps grow closer, and your heart begins to race. You slip into a dark corner, trying to make yourself invisible, while Thomas and the rest of the outlaws prepare to defend themselves. Shadows dance on the cave walls, casting a sense of danger and awe. Suddenly, the footsteps stop, and a soft female voice rises from outside the cave. Thomas, I'm Eliano. Don't attack. Your heart relaxes slightly, letting out a cautious sigh, though tension still lingers. In this harsh world, every encounter, every step, could change your life or end it in an instant. Thomas signals everyone to remain calm, and a young woman enters, her hair disheveled and her clothes torn. She introduces herself as Eleanor, explaining that she had been a servant in a nearby castle, but fled after being falsely accused of stealing a noble's ring. Eleanor tells her story in a hesitant yet steady voice. The nobles are planning a campaign against the outlaws in the forest after your recent raids have provoked their anger. You have only 1 day before they reach you, she warns, her eyes studying you as if trying to discern who you really are. You begin to outline an idea, drawing on your modern knowledge of tactics and strategy to help protect the group. You propose laying an ambush for the guards, using traps such as pits camouflaged with branches and leaves, or creating diversions by lighting small, controlled fires in the forest away from your camp to draw the enemy's attention. You suggest scouting likely approach routes, posting lookouts, and preparing simple signals so the group can coordinate a quick, organized response rather than be scattered by panic. Thomas appears hesitant at first, studying the plan with wary eyes, cautious of risk, but after a moment he agrees to try your scheme. The alternative is death or capture, and the danger surrounding the group leaves no room for hesitation. You feel the weight of every decision. Each trap, each small movement could mean the difference between survival and annihilation, and your modern skills and knowledge have suddenly become a real tool for staying alive in this brutal world. Eleanor suggests using her knowledge of the castle to steal supplies before the guards arrive, an action that could give the group a significant advantage against the impending campaign. History tells us that expeditions against outlaws were common in the Middle Ages, especially when those outlaws threatened the nobles' interests. Now, with a plan forming, the camp buzzes with tense activity. Scouts are dispatched to reconnoiter the likely approach routes. The strongest among you begin to dig and camouflage pits, and others quietly prepare diversion fires to be lit at the appointed signal. Everyone moves with a grim purpose. There is no time for debate, only preparation, coordination, and hope that your combined cunning will be enough to face the coming storm. Simple traps, pits or natural obstacles, were sometimes used in warfare or to defend positions, but they require careful planning and precise execution. You spend the next day with the group preparing. You help dig the traps in the forest using primitive tools like sticks and stones, learning quickly how much effort and stealth the work demands. Eleanor lays out a mental map of the castle for you. The food stores lie behind the stables and are guarded by only 2 sentries at night. Reaching them, however, means crossing a narrow bridge over a trench. One mistake could cost you your life. Every step, every movement, every breath must be calculated with the utmost care. As night falls, you set out with Thomas, Eleanor, and 3 others, moving stealthily through the darkness. Every sense is heightened, every step taut with tension, and every shadow seems to pulse with danger. The forest and the castle lie ahead, and the mission is more than a theft. It is a test of courage, caution, and intelligence in a world that shows no mercy to the weak. The cold bites through your thin clothing, and a pang of longing hits you for the warmth of a modern coat, something you've never known in this harsh world. As you reach the castle, you slip through the surrounding woods, alert to the flickering torchlight. Every small movement could create a sound that reveals your presence, and the slightest mistake might cost you everything. You try to recall the simple physics you know about distributing weight across the bridge, but fear and tension scatter your focus. Suddenly one of the outlaws trips, the noise drawing the guard's attention. Thomas hisses, "Run or fight!" Your heart pounding, you choose to run. Arrows whistle past, frighteningly close, reminding you that danger surrounds you from every side. Eleanor yanks you behind a large tree, and with skill and caution the 2 of you finally make it to the storeroom. Then, to your shock, a 3rd guard, one Eleanor hadn't known about, appears suddenly in front of you. In a desperate instant, you swing your staff and strike him on the head. The chance you were waiting for drops into your hands like lightning. The group manages to steal a sack of grain and some simple weapons before making their escape. Your hearts race, sweat mixes with the cold, yet a surge of relief and accomplishment fills you. History tells us that raiding supplies from castles was a common yet perilous practice among outlaws. The risk was always high due to heavy guarding, and every step could mean the difference between life and death. Castles were centers of power in the feudal system, and any attack on them was seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the nobles. You returned to the cave exhausted, yet with a loot that could sustain you for a few days. The sense of victory is fleeting, for life in the forest offers no long-lasting comfort or respite. The next morning, the group discovers that one of the outlaws, who had been struck by an arrow during the escape, is running a dangerously high fever. There are no medicines, and the best you can do is wrap him in a damp cloth in an attempt to lower his temperature. You try to recall your knowledge of first aid, but without clean tools or knowledge of local herbs, you feel powerless, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on your chest. Eleanor sits beside you, her eyes filled with curiosity and concern, and begins asking about your old world. You tell her about things that seem like magic to her. Cars, hospitals, the internet. Her eyes widen with astonishment, sparkling as if she's witnessing wonders beyond anything she could have imagined. Then she speaks with a seriousness that feels as heavy as a shocking truth. Even if your world is real, you are here now, among us, in this harsh world. What will you do? Thomas abruptly interrupts, his voice firm. The guards are approaching the forest, the smoke-filled air, the fire beginning to die down, and all the nocturnal sounds make the decision even more daunting. The group must choose. Stay and fight using the traps you've prepared, or flee to a distant part of the forest, exposing yourselves to hunger, cold, and isolation. You look at Eleanor, then at Thomas, and finally at the fire, its faint flames casting dancing shadows across your faces. You deliberate inwardly, trying to weigh your modern knowledge, the skills and strategies that might help you, against the brutal reality surrounding you. But is this knowledge enough to save you from the nobles' forces? Or will you once again be forced to flee, searching for a new refuge in a world that shows no mercy to the weak? The guards' footsteps echo in the distance, the heavy thud of their boots filling the forest with dread. You grip the staff that has become your only weapon, feeling every heartbeat quicken as danger draws nearer. Will you fight beside Thomas and Eleanor, or will you choose to flee, clinging to the hope of finding a way out? The forest is silent, but the threat approaches fast, and the smoke-thickened air makes each breath harder. Thomas gathers the outlaws around him with brisk urgency. His face is grim but composed. We will fight to the death. If we flee, we may live another day now, he commands. Eleanor steps toward you. Her eyes reflect a mixture of fear and resolve, as if silently telling you, every step now could be the difference between life and death, between freedom and oppression, between survival and annihilation. You are Sammy, the staff heavy in your hands, every heartbeat reminding you that you stand on the edge of a fateful decision. Every choice now could determine your life and the fate of the group. You recall your modern knowledge of defensive tactics in confined spaces like the cave and realize it could give you an advantage, but you are few in number, and your weapons are primitive. On the other hand, fleeing through the forest in the dark is perilous. You might fall into one of your own traps, become lost among the trees, or run into the guards unexpectedly. You think quickly and propose a middle course. Use the traps you prepared in the forest to slow the guards down. Then make for the river Eleanor mentioned, where you can hide among dense reeds. Thomas grudgingly agrees, his voice cold and hard. If your plan fails, I won't hesitate to leave you behind. The words chill you, but there is no time for hesitation. The group moves swiftly, scattering branches over the pits to conceal them, and heads for the river. As you run, you hear the cry of a guard falling into one of the traps. A brief moment of relief and triumph that vanishes quickly as the hounds the guards have released begin to bark and give chase. The cold cuts through your bones and hunger weakens you. Yet with every step and every breath you cling to the hope of survival. The forest is dark and shadows shift around you. You know that every second now could be the difference between life and death. History shows that using traps and natural terrain was a common tactic among outlaws when facing organized forces. Rivers and marshes often served as familiar refuges for fugitives, places where it was much harder for pursuing guards to track them. At last you reach the river. The cold water glints under the pale moonlight. The thick reeds along its banks offer temporary cover, but the biting cold makes your teeth chatter with every breath. Eleanor leads the group to a small island in the middle of the river, where the deep waters make it accessible without the need to swim. You hide among the tall grasses, hearing the barking of the dogs fade gradually into the distance. Yet the sense of relief remains fleeting. The cold water soaks your clothes, sending shivers through every bone in your body. You recall that pneumonia was often fatal in the Middle Ages, especially without antibiotics, and a growing sense of worry tightens your chest with every passing moment. Lying among the reeds, you begin thinking of ways to improve your temporary situation, seeking small measures to stay warm, dry, and safe in this precarious refuge. You suggest to Thomas that you build a simple shelter using branches and mud to protect yourselves from the biting cold and harsh wind. Eleanor helps you gather materials, but Thomas remains skeptical, his eyes scrutinizing your plan as if weighing the odds of success or failure in a world that shows no mercy to the weak. We don't build houses. We keep moving, Thomas says, yet the exhaustion in his eyes betrays that he's considering other options, as if his mind is searching for a compromise between survival and escape. You decide to test a simple idea. Starting a small fire using stones to generate sparks, just as you learned in modern survival programs. After laborious attempts, you finally succeed in igniting a tiny flame that provides the group with a hint of warmth, a rare and fleeting sense of comfort in this merciless world. But your moment of joy is fleeting, for the fire draws unwanted attention. In the distance, you notice the flickering light of a torch moving among the trees. Is it the guards returning, or perhaps other thieves searching for prey? Thomas shouts his usual command, "Extinguish the fire immediately," yet even a wisp of smoke might have already revealed your location. History tells us that rivers and marshlands were common refuges for fugitives, offering shelter and concealment. However, they were also fraught with dangers: the biting cold, treacherous terrain, and the ever-present threat of disease. Lighting a fire was essential for survival, providing warmth and a sense of security, but it also carried the constant risk of exposure. As you huddle in the darkness, Eleanor begins to speak of a distant city she has heard about, a place where trade flourishes and the nobles are said to be less cruel. Perhaps we can find a place there to live without fear, she says, her voice filled with hope, her eyes shimmering with the glimmer of a dream. From your historical knowledge, you realize that cities in the Middle Ages were no less harsh than the forest. Disease, crime, and overcrowding threatened anyone who lived there. Yet the idea of a new place, somewhere safer, filled with a glimmer of hope, seems tempting, especially compared to the harsh life in the dark forest, where every day is a struggle for survival. You try to persuade Thomas that moving to the city might be the best solution, particularly if you could apply some of your modern knowledge, like improving food storage methods or purifying water. But his harsh voice cuts through your reasoning. The cities are not for us. We are free here, even if that freedom means death. Eleanor, on her part, seems more open to the idea, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. She asks you to explain more about this modern world you always speak of. As you begin recounting stories of cars, hospitals, and clean water, the sound of raindrops starts falling on the surrounding forest. The rain makes hiding easier, yet it increases the cold and dampness, and the wounded in your group begin coughing, reminding you that time is running out. Now you are faced with difficult choices. Will you stay with the group and try to lead them toward the city? Or will you risk venturing out on your own, clinging to the hope of returning to your own world? Or will you confront the approaching guards, attempting to protect those you have begun to consider your companions and allies in fate? The rain falls heavily, and the sounds of the guards blend with the howling wind. You stand beside Eleanor and Thomas, gripping the stick that has become an extension of your arm and a guardian of your life. The fire has died down, but the light of the torches is approaching, and each passing second intensifies the pressure and tension weighing on you. The choice is now in your hands. Will you place your hope in the distant city, or fight to survive here in the forest, or dare to venture alone in this harsh world? The forest is silent, yet it waits for your decision, while the Middle Ages wait for no one. The rain pours relentlessly, soaking your thin clothes and causing the surrounding reeds to sway violently with every gust of wind. The sounds of the guards echo from afar, mingling with the roar of the wind, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint their location. Thomas whispers to the group, "If we stay here, the wounded will die from the cold before the guards even arrive. We have to move." Eleanor grabs your arm, her face pale, yet her eyes carry a fierce determination. "Sammy, if you know anything that can save us, now is the time," she says. You recall your modern survival knowledge. Staying warm and dry is an absolute priority. Without proper shelter or fire, the situation seems desperate. You suggest to Thomas that the group move to another cave Eleanor mentioned, located on a nearby hill, drier and less exposed to discovery. But reaching it means crossing the river again, a dangerous challenge with the wounded and the relentless downpour. Thomas agrees, his voice sharp and stern. "If your idea is wrong, this will be the end of us." You help Eleanor carry one of the wounded as Thomas leads the group through the cold, rushing water. Your feet sink into the mud, the water rising to your knees. Yet you keep moving, clinging to hope and your determination to survive. When you reach the hill, you find the cave, a small opening hidden behind rocks. You enter quickly, using a wet piece of cloth to cover the entrance, hoping to conceal your movements from any prying eyes. But the cold inside the cave is merciless, and the wounded moan softly. You try once again to light a fire using stones, but the wet wood makes the task nearly impossible, and your sense of helplessness grows with every passing moment. History tells us that caves and highlands were common refuges for outlaws, providing natural protection from harsh weather and enemies. Yet, at the same time, they offered no shield against the biting cold and dampness, especially when food and medical supplies were scarce. As you struggle to light the fire, Elena approaches you, offering her help with a calm smile, her eyes carrying a quiet confidence. She tells you about a local herb she has seen the servants use in the castle to dry and treat wounds, suggesting you search for it near the cave. Under the light rain, you both carefully begin the search, moving stealthily to avoid the guards. When you find some of the herbs, you quickly return to the cave. You start tending to the wounded using your basic first aid knowledge, cleaning one of the outlaw's injuries with a damp cloth, though you know this will not suffice if the infection worsens. Thomas watches you with a scrutinizing eye, and it seems his trust in you grows slightly. In a low voice he says, "You've saved us twice now, stranger, but the guards will not stop. If you want to stay with us, you must become one of us." He formally offers you a place among the outlaws, but accepting it means giving up any hope of returning to your modern world, if that was even possible in the first place. Elena smiles at you encouragingly. Here, you're not just a stranger. You can become something greater. You try to apply your modern knowledge to improve conditions inside the cave. You suggest building a barrier from stones at the cave entrance to protect against the harsh winds and any guards who might approach. With the help of the healthy outlaws, you begin gathering stones, but exhaustion starts creeping into your body with every movement. The biting cold and dampness make the work doubly difficult, testing both your endurance and determination. While working, you hear a strange sound, soft whispers, as if coming from within the cave itself. You approach cautiously, every movement making your heart race, until you discover a narrow passage leading to an inner chamber. Inside, you find ancient traces, stone tools and primitive drawings on the walls, signs that this place was not just an ordinary cave. Could it have been a refuge used by others before you? History tells us that caves have served as shelters since ancient times, and during the Middle Ages they became common hideouts for outlaws and rebels. As for the medicinal herbs that Elena had found, they were part of traditional remedies, but their effectiveness was very limited due to the lack of scientific knowledge in that era. The rain finally ceases, yet the sky remains heavy with clouds, and the cold air stings your skin. The inner passage of the cave sparks your curiosity intensely, but it fills the outlaws with fear. The wet wood and narrow corners make the task nearly impossible, and every step you take could be fraught with danger. Thomas warns you in a stern tone. The villagers speak of spirits that haunt these ancient places. Do not approach if you are not ready for the unknown. Yet your heart tells you that this passage may conceal something useful, perhaps a secret exit or hidden supplies. You try to convince Elena to join you, but she hesitates. "If you are wrong, we could lose everything," she says, her voice carrying a mixture of fear and caution. Suddenly, one of the outlaws emerges from the river, his face pale and his eyes shining with terror. "The guards, they've found our tracks." Panic spreads through the group like wildfire. Thomas shouts, "Prepare to fight." but you realize that your chances are slim, and a direct confrontation could be deadly. You glance toward the inner passage, then at Elena and Thomas, feeling the crushing weight of the decision pressing on your chest. Do you venture into the passage, risking getting lost or confronting the unknown? Or do you stay and fight alongside the outlaws, using your modern knowledge in a desperate attempt to save them? Or do you flee alone, clinging to the hope of returning to your old world? You stand at the entrance of the inner passage, your fingers intertwined with Elena's, while Thomas raises his sword cautiously. The sounds of the guards grow louder, mingling with the fierce wind howling through the cave. Every passing second makes your breath catch and sharpens the tension that coils in your chest. The passage before you is dark, yet it whispers promises of either survival or doom. Every step you take heightens the sense of danger and mystery, and you realize that the choice you make now could determine your entire fate. Will you venture into the unknown? Will you face destiny alongside your companions? Or will you leave everything behind? The Middle Ages await your decision, and time is running out. The sounds of the guards are now closing in on the cave entrance, their footsteps mingling with the sharp barks of dogs that cut through the night silence. Elena grips your hand, her fingers trembling from cold and fear, while Thomas raises his sword, ready to defend the group. Yet your eyes remain fixed on the mysterious inner passage, which seems to whisper promises you have yet to understand. In a decisive moment, you determine that the passage is your only chance. You whisper quickly, defying Thomas's warnings about spirits, and begin to move. After a brief hesitation, Elena decides to follow you, while Thomas stays behind with the outlaws to guard the entrance. You hold a small torch, which you manage to light with difficulty, and quietly advance toward the narrow passage. The stone walls are cold and smooth, etched with strange carvings that seem far older than the Middle Ages. The smell of dampness fills your nostrils, and the drip of water echoes in the darkness, as if the passage itself is breathing with each step you take. Suddenly, your foot slips on a slick rock, and you nearly fall into a deep pit whose bottom you cannot see. Elena yanks you back at the last moment, and together you realize that this passage is far more perilous than you had imagined. Suddenly, a scream from outside pierces the silence, the sound of one of the outlaws falling to a sword strike. Amid all this chaos, you feel the pressure to keep moving, for retreat would mean death or capture. After moments that feel like hours, the passage widens into a small chamber, and the faint glow of your torch reveals its details. There, in the center of the chamber, lay an old wooden chest, thickly covered in dust and surrounded by the remnants of human bones. Elena steps back, terrified, but you move forward cautiously and open the chest. Inside, you find an ornate dagger, a worn leather map, and a silver pendant bearing a strange symbol. The map appears to indicate a secret exit through the hills, though the markings are faint and difficult to read. You realize that what you have discovered could be the key to survival or the beginning of an even more dangerous adventure. Is this an ancient treasure or a cleverly laid trap? History reminds you that caves were sometimes used as storage for treasures or weapons by rebels and outlaws, yet they were always fraught with danger. Sudden collapses, natural traps, or even confined spaces where victims could be trapped. Leather maps were rare, but they were occasionally used to preserve the secrets of hidden shelters and their locations. Before you can examine the map closely, you hear heavy footsteps approaching the corridor. The guards have discovered the entrance. Elena urges you to hurry, but you clutch the dagger, the map, and the pendant, and together you dash into another passageway that branches off from the chamber. The corridor narrows further, the air growing stifling and difficult to breathe. The small torch begins to flicker and dim, and you realize you may have to continue through complete darkness. Suddenly, a sound of collapse echoes behind you. Part of the passage has caved in, perhaps triggered by the guard's movement or your own hurried steps. Dust fills the air, choking and blinding you both, forcing you to cough violently. Yet there is no time to stop. After moments of terror and exertion, you reach a small opening leading outside. Cold air hits your face, and the moonlight glimmers across the distant hills, granting a brief, fleeting sense of triumph. But the joy of escape quickly fades when you hear the dogs barking again. The guards have not abandoned you. They have found another path to reach the hills. Elena quickly examines the map and points to a nearby valley that seems to be the exit indicated. But the valley is surrounded by steep cliffs, where a single misstep could be fatal. At a critical moment, you decide to use the dagger to cut branches and fashion a makeshift rope from the nearby plant fibers, drawing on your modern knowledge of survival techniques. Elena assists you, and together you work quickly to secure the rope to a stable rock. You begin your descent, each movement fraught with tension, but the rope starts to fray under your combined weight. It is a harrowing, adrenaline-filled moment, and when you finally reach the bottom of the valley, the rope snaps, leaving the guards stranded above temporarily. History shows that outlaws often used rugged terrain to evade capture, but cliffs and valleys were extremely dangerous, frequently resulting in injuries or death. Primitive ropes were known, yet the materials used were often weak and unreliable. Now, at the bottom of the valley, you find yourselves surrounded by rocks and dense trees. The cold cuts through your bones, and hunger once again tightens its grip on your stomachs. Yet at least life has not ended, and the temporary escape has granted you a chance to survive. Elena clutches the map, but the faint moonlight makes it difficult to read. Her gaze falls upon the silver pendant you took from the chest, and she examines it closely. The engraved symbol resembles a cross intertwined with a circle, strangely familiar to you, a memory from your study surfaces. A similar symbol was used by secretive groups in the Middle Ages, perhaps the Knights Templar or other rebellious factions. Could this pendant be the key to something greater? Elena whispers, this symbol might be connected to another refuge, or to the safe city I mentioned earlier. But the valley surrounding you is far from safe. You hear the sound of horses approaching, and the guards have found a way down. In a bold move, you draw upon your modern knowledge once again. You place dry branches along the guards' path and ignite them using your dagger and flint, creating a small wall of fire to slow their advance. Yet the flames spread faster than you expected, and you realize that if you don't move immediately, you could become trapped. You dash toward the route marked on the map, but the ground suddenly shakes. Was it a minor earthquake or a landslide caused by the previous fire and rain? Rocks tumble around you, and Elena screams as she narrowly avoids a massive boulder threatening to crush her. After several minutes of running and hiding, you reach an ancient stone gate, concealed behind thick shrubs. The same symbol is engraved on it as on the silver pendant, intensifying the sense of mystery and excitement. But the gate is locked, and the sounds of the guards draw closer once again. Will you be able to open it and reach the secret refuge or city? Or will the spreading fire and falling rocks end your journey before uncovering the great secret? You stand before the stone gate, the fire glowing behind you, while the sounds of guards and horses fill the valley. You clutch the silver pendant tightly. Its weight feels heavier than mere metal, as if it carries a secret far greater than you could imagine. Eleanor pushes the gate with all her strength, but it remains immovable. Your eyes fall on the symbol engraved on the pendant, a cross intertwined with a circle, and you notice an identical engraving on the gate itself. Suddenly, something clicks in your mind. You insert the pendant into a small cavity in the stone, as if it were a key. A faint clicking sound echoes, and the gate begins to tremble slowly before sliding open, revealing a dark tunnel that smells of ancient earth. No time to hesitate. Eleanor whispers, and you step forward together. The gate slams shut behind you with a resounding thud, muffling the sounds of the guards outside. The torch you carry barely illuminates the path, while the tunnel narrows gradually, as if the walls themselves might crush you. Suddenly, you hear something, a strange sound, a low whisper coming from the depths of the tunnel. Eleanor stops, her eyes glinting with fear. "Is this the spirits Thomas spoke of?" she asks. You take a deep breath and recall your modern knowledge. Perhaps it's just drafts of air or a natural echo, or perhaps something entirely different, something the Middle Ages never knew, nor any modern survival technique could predict. The tunnel whispers both promise and threat at the same time, each step drawing you closer to the great mystery that could change your fate. After moments of walking through the narrow tunnel, you arrive at a large underground chamber. A faint light emanates from glowing crystals embedded in the walls, giving the place a strange, almost magical aura. In the center of the room stands an ancient stone altar, surrounded by small statues depicting knights wielding swords and shields, as if guarding an ancient secret. On the altar, you find a leather-bound book sealed with the same symbol as the silver pendant. Before you can open it, the tunnel shakes violently, and some stones fall from the ceiling. The guards are perhaps trying to force the gate or destroy it. You recall history. Tunnels and secret chambers were sometimes used by groups like the Knights Templar to protect their treasures or secrets. The glowing crystals might be natural phosphorescence, which in the Middle Ages was believed to hold magical powers. You hold the book cautiously and break the seal. The pages are filled with a strange script, a mixture of Latin and indecipherable symbols, yet some illustrations catch your attention. Maps of unknown locations, primitive machines resembling water mills, and even a description of how to purify water using charcoal. You realize that this book might be the work of a scholar or a secretive group that sought to preserve their knowledge far from the eyes of the church and the nobles. Eleanor looks at you in astonishment. "Is this from your world?" You shake your head, explaining that while this is ancient knowledge, it could very well be the key to survival in this harsh world. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes from the entrance of the tunnel, accompanied by the heavy thud of footsteps. The guards have managed to force the gate open, and the barking of dogs rises sharply, filling the chamber with an atmosphere thick with danger and imminent threat. There is no time to examine or study the book carefully. Every second has become precious. You clutch the pendant and the book tightly, your eyes scanning frantically for any escape route, any path that could lead you out before your presence is discovered. Eleanor casts a cautious glance behind the altar and notices a small opening, barely wide enough for a single person. You exchange quick, urgent looks and realize that this is your only chance to survive. With hesitation but firm resolve, you both slip into the narrow gap. The new tunnel descends sharply, plunging downward at a steep angle, and with every step, the damp air grows colder. From deep below comes the faint sound of running water. A hidden underground river, perhaps. Its movement dimly illuminated by the glow of crystals embedded in the tunnel walls. The water flows forcefully, yet it seems to offer a potential escape from this nightmare. Eleanor leans against you, her face pale, yet her eyes shine with determination. "If I die here, so be it. I will fight," she says in a firm, unwavering voice. But you refuse to abandon her. Gripping the dagger you found in the chest, you begin cutting branches from the nearby shrubs, drawing on your modern knowledge of survival techniques. You tie the branches together with a cord made of plant fiber, constructing a makeshift raft. Step by step, you help Eleanor climb onto it, ensuring she is secure. As the raft hits the water, the sounds of the guards reach the opening, sharp and terrifying. An arrow whistles past your head, slicing the air between you in a deadly whisper. You realize that time has run out. The river carries the raft with astonishing speed through the tunnel. The icy water soaks your clothes, sending shivers through your bones and making it nearly impossible to control the makeshift vessel. Suddenly, the raft collides with a massive rock, tipping dangerously. You hold Eleanor tightly, preventing her from plunging into the churning water. Every moment feels like a battle against the river itself, the current relentless, the darkness oppressive, and the danger pressing from all sides. But the greatest shock comes when you see the book slip from your hands, sinking into the dark depths of the water. Every page, every piece of knowledge you had been counting on to survive, disappears into the rushing currents, leaving you to face this harsh world with nothing but your own determination and willpower, with no guarantee of survival. The tunnel ends abruptly, and the river carries you both forcefully toward a small waterfall, plunging you into an open lake beneath a sky heavy with clouds. Your heart pounds in your chest as the raft collides with the water, rocking precariously on the small waves. Yet, despite everything, you both manage to reach the shore with great difficulty. You breathe deeply, but there is no time to rest. The guards have not given up. They have found a way around the tunnel and are closing in once again. Eleanor groans in pain, her steps faltering as she leans on you to maintain her balance. The silver pendant is still in your hand, glinting under the moonlight, as if trying to convey a message, but you cannot tell whether it will lead you to a safe escape or into an even greater trap. Ahead of you stretches a dense forest, its leaves shivering in the cold wind. In the distance, faint lights glimmer, perhaps a small village or a distant town, like a mysterious promise of safety or a trick waiting to ensnare you. Eleanor can barely walk, and hunger and cold are wearing both of you down. Yet her eyes still shine with determination. Will you carry her, risking every ounce of strength to reach the distant lights? Or will you hide once again within the dark embrace of the forest, trying to evade the guards? Perhaps the pendant holds a secret that could alter your fate, a key to an unknown destiny you never could have imagined in the Middle Ages, where no one knows what awaits you in the shadowed corners or among the trees. The wind lashes around you, carrying the increasing sounds of the guards. The echo of their steps grows closer. The pendant gleams in your hand, reflecting the moonlight in a breathtaking shimmer. The forest stretches out before you. The distant lights promise a glimmer of hope, and your options are limited. Either risk everything to reach the city, confront the guards with what little strength remains, or rely on the mysterious secret of the pendant, which may hold the only key to survival. The Middle Ages allow no time for hesitation, and the choice now rests in your hands.